This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Today we have someone joining us for this episode. It's the Grey Warder, or Morgan. I don't know, which do you prefer to be called? Morgan the Grey Warder?
Probably Morgan is just fine. I mean, the Grey Warder is okay, but it feels a little pretentious and silly, which I'm guilty of being both, but it's not quite so ponderous.
I think you have a bit of a right to be pretentious, because you kicked ass at the trivia quiz at SpoilerCon. You were seriously, impressed.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome how much you were just popping those answers out like it was nothing.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and I really appreciated, the gratifying middle fingers that I got at the end of every round as people came into the kitchen and flipped us all the bird. So our lovely team, Avienda's regard gift, got all the hate, and it was great, and really appreciated it.
Well, you deserved it. You deserved every bit. Because
Jess is saying Avienda's regard gift. That's right, represent.
Oh, you guys really did kick ass. And so, after watching that, I was like, okay, Morgan, you're local, you're just going to have to come to my place, I'm going to set you up, I'm going to put you in front of a mic, and we're going to talk about the Wheel of Time. And I think I gave you a pick of some of the episodes, or chapters coming up, and you said you wanted to be there for chapter 27?
Yep.
Can you tell me why you chose that chapter?
I chose it because it's kind of complex. I feel like The Fires of Heaven is an interesting book in the sense that the story kind of opens up and you get into the politics in Salidar. You meet a whole bunch of new people, new Aes Sedai, and you kind of, you see the character of Swan having to figure out how to navigate in a world where she has far less power. You get to see kind of the Salidar Six and their whole situation and begin to see how everything gets laid out between them and the Hall of the Tower, and how the foundation starts to get laid for Egwene's rise to power. It's just a very kind of pivotal chapter in what really is a very pivotal book. So I felt like it was a good one.
It really is. I hadn't really, to be honest, when I was rereading these chapters to prep for tonight, I hadn't really remembered this as such a important moment, but I could just, it took me much longer to get through it, and I found myself wanting to highlight entire pages of dialogue, because like you said, there's just so much laid out here. These are the chapters where there's actually the most to talk about, rather than chapters that I think people often remember, the big battles.
I agree.
I was impressed by the pick, because this was such a good episode. Or such a good chapter to pick, because there's so much to talk about. As because a lot of people, I get some people who are like, I want to do Dumai's Wells, and I'm like, I don't really want to guest onto that one. It's going to be pretty straightforward.
And then they beat everybody up. It was crazy. Yeah. That's all you can really say about that.
Woo, explosions.
It is really fun to read, but yeah, like I said, I'm making the same point over and over. But there's less to talk about in the action scenes, because it's just an action scene. As opposed to, you were talking about, Swan grappling with who she is now, her identity, and Leane and how she's regarded. Anyway, we'll get there, but
totally. But we did start with, we weren't quite at, we always do 2 chapters at once, and we figured we'd warm up with chapter 26 before we got into the real meat of chapter 27. Because I do feel like those 2 chapters kind of roll together, right? It's everything from the introduction of Min and Suian and Leane on the road up until their sort of acceptance and place is established in Salidar.
Oh, agreed.
So they go together really well. It's where we are. So we're going to start with 26 and prepare to be here until 10ish.
I'm happy to do so.
Awesome. And we're really excited about that.
Aww.
It's fun to have new people in our conversations, because it's usually just me and Seth, but a third set of eyes, for lack of a better term, can turn our conversations in ways that we probably wouldn't usually get to. It's just fun to have new perspectives.
Oh, don't worry, I have opinions.
I know. I can't wait to hear them.
Going for Chapter 26, Salidar. And our symbol is the snake in the wheel. The halo of greatness, blue and gold, flickered fitfully around Logain's head. Though he rode slumped in his saddle, Min did not understand why it had appeared more often of late. He no longer even bothered to lift his eyes from the weeds in front of the black stallion to the low, wooded hills rolling by all around them. The other two women rode together a little ahead, Swan as awkward on shaggy Bella as she had ever been, Leane guiding her grey mare deftly, with knees more than reins. Only an unnaturally straight ribbon of ferns, poking through the leaf-covered forest floor, hinted that there had ever been a road here. The lacy ferns were withering, and the leaf mold rustled and cracked dryly under the horses' hooves. Thickly woven branches gave a little shelter from the noonday sun, but it was hardly cool. Sweat rolled down Min's face, despite an occasional breeze that stirred from behind them. 15 days now they had ridden west and south from Lugard, guided only by Swan's insistence that she knew exactly where they were heading. Not that she shared her destination, of course. Swan and Leane were as closed-mouthed as sprung bear traps. Min was not even sure that Leane actually knew. 15 days, while towns and villages grew fewer and farther between, until finally there were none. Day by day, Logain's shoulders had sagged a little more, and day by day, the halo appeared more often. At first, he had only begun muttering that they were chasing Jack of the Mists, but Swan had regained her leadership without opposition, as he turned more and more inward. For the past 6 days, he had not seemed to have the energy to care where they were going, or whether they would ever get there.
You know, I think the halo of greatness is just because they're near Bello.
Because one cannot be great when you're terribly far from Bella. To be serious, I assume that the halo of greatness thing is just much more likely to happen only if Logain gets to Salidar, because then he'll run into Nynaeve.
Obviously, he's on that path, but you have to understand, like, just seeing the halo once, it is guaranteed.
That's true, too. As we're in Min's head over the next page or so, she thinks about that a lot. As we see Swan asking her, like, do you see it? Is the halo still there? Like, constantly checking in, and Min's annoyed by that because she says, and she thinks, or tries to explain, I think, that if it only shows up once, then it's for sure. It doesn't matter if it shows up again.
I'm thinking it probably shows up more and more often because Logain is kind of central to the web of the pattern, like one of the people more close in, and maybe people like that get images more often, even if they don't channel anymore, because she doesn't mention seeing as many things around Swan and Leane after they've been stilled. So I'm curious whether that might be that his halo keeps showing up.
I like that. I've never even tried to theorize on it, but I like having a reason for that to be happening, right? Why constantly reappear if it doesn't really matter, and if there's only one person to interpret it?
It does seem that Min's visions tend to show up more frequently as you get closer to the event that portrays them.
Which makes sense.
How far off are we from his meeting with Nynaeve? Like, when is Logain healed? Is it in this book or next book?
Next book.
Yeah.
Probably only a couple of months, though, because it's late summer at this point. They're starting to complain about the weather, but it's not, like, alarming yet, so I would say it's probably very late September or early October as far as, like, our reference point. When she heals them, they're starting to worry about the weather, but it hasn't gotten into what they call the Feast of Lights yet, which would be Christmas, so probably it'll be a couple of months.
And we've been on about a year and a half timeline since Winter Night, which was, spring. So half a year after a year and a half after spring is going to be sort of end of summer, early fall.
The Winter Night, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just double checking.
And we see like things like the leaf mold rustled and crackled dryly, sweat's rolling down Min's face, like everybody's sweating, it's hot, it's dry.
Yeah, I noticed the ferns Min mentions are dying, that are like live in shade underneath these tall trees, and they're usually the last to go. It stays damp down there. It's just another little nudge saying something's wrong. All these ferns shouldn't be wilting.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is the inconsistency with who's sweating and who's not.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask about that, because Min mentions that Leane isn't sweating, and I wanted to ask about the temperature trick.
The mind trick?
And what you guys thought of that. Yeah.
Because Suan later says, I would love not to sweat, but I can't. Which seems to imply that because she's been stilled, she can't use that mind trick anymore.
But, I mean, does that mean that someone like Lan can't do it? Is that a thing?
No, it's a trick that you can learn. It makes it sound like it's a meditation trick. In the next chapter, she says that she mostly manages to maintain the concentration, but being in the room with, like, the Salidar 6 and all of them kind of nailing her with their eyes makes her lose her concentration and she starts to sweat. Because Rand offers to teach it to Min once he learns it from Mazrim Taim, so I don't think it's just for people who can channel.
Timber's making extra noise for us, but yeah, I think that's that's a good observation. Maybe just channeling helps her focus more, or you know what I mean. Being in that state of mind helped her keep that focus in the past, where she doesn't have that now.
Yeah, I just from reading that, it implied to me that she couldn't because she was stilled, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
That's why I wanted to ask.
Says the heat did not seem to be bothering her, not so much as a sheen of perspiration marred her coppery face.
Well, and we know Leanne's been applying her trades to Logain. Practicing.
She's trying to get him to perk up a bit. I perceive this as the three women are perceiving Logain as, like, kind of accepting death, dying of the sadness that you die of when you're cut off from the source. They don't want him to go. He's important to their plans. So Leon's trying to, get him to live in the world by flirting with him.
I mean, I think they talk about how her flirting's so effective, she can even raise the dead. And it's like, yeah, that's actually what she's trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, her flirting is very tactile in a lot of ways, so just, like, touching him and stuff like that is a way to be, like, laying hands on him, trying to get him a little stirred up. I mean, anchoring him to the world in that way. But it doesn't seem to be working anymore.
I kind of think of it as the adrenaline boost you get from that sort of physical touch and the serotonin and stuff that, like, we talk a lot about how channeling is a lot like doing drugs, and you get that serotonin kick, and you have to kind of, if you don't get the drug anymore, you end up in withdrawal symptoms. And I sort of think of being stilled like being in permanent withdrawal, and the only way to help you is to, like, replace that serotonin with something else. Flirting and touching is definitely one way to do that.
That makes sense to me. Just being sad, bored, and purposeless, and how that could, send you into at least a spiral of depression. But in this case, it seems that people actually die of it.
It's difficult enough even when you can't channel.
Yeah, right?
No kidding. Right. I only enjoy two things, dopamine and serotonin.
I kind of want to read what Satanis wrote, because I just like this. I thought it was interesting. He wrote in Discord, a lot of the series is based on barriers that exist only in the mind. Some channelers think you have to throw fireballs, rather, because that's how they were taught. And Egwene says at some point that you can tell who was taught in the White Tower because of the way they weave certain weaves, or like specific hand motions and things like that. And that, I think, in response to the meditation trick that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I think one time we see that the TFoH can toss fireballs without using a tossing motion, because that's, like, not part of their culture.
Right.
Yeah, the weave doesn't require a hand motion, but a lot of people learn that it does, and then they kind of create a block. Or that's not quite the right word, but I think you know what I mean.
A pathway, almost like we were talking earlier about, like, carving grooves in your mental pathways, and I think sort of the same thing is true for channeling, where it's like once you learn a certain way to do something, that's that groove in your brain, and that's why you can't, like, learn weaves that are related to a weave you already know and super close. You just can't make that small adjustment.
Leanne trying to teach Min the kind of domani. It's almost like a discipline of seduction. We see Min mention that there's, like, I'm not looking at it right now, but that Leanne says there's 96 ways to stroke a man's face, and 112 different kinds of kisses or stuff like and things like that. And Min is not interested in whatever, learning this discipline. Is that a good thing to call it?
You know the problem with men? No one teaches us how to be men.
Is that supposed to be why you do such a bad job of it? I'm not saying I believe that.
Well, that's a reference early on.
Probably would be good if there was like some kind of adult class, you know?
Totally. Timber's just being a ham now that we've got Morgan over. He's totally just like, I want all the attention. Why are you not paying attention to me?
Yeah, he's rolling around dramatically on the bed. So I wanted to point out something about Swan. Swan's learning how to, be diffident, as the next chapter points out, how to bend her head, how to accept the fact that she has much less power, but she's still intrinsically a bully in a lot of ways. And so you've got this from Min's point of view, where she's having to deal with the fact that she basically, immediately buckles down and does what Swan says, doesn't take the snippy tone with her, just basically, bows to her will as if she were still the Amaryllis and resents it constantly, and I always have struggled with the character of Swan because it's almost like she's a more powerful, more controlled type of Nynaeve personality, like the need to browbeat people, the need to strong-arm people to have her way, and not willing to take no for an answer. And so in the point of view of people having to deal with that, I feel their frustration and, sympathize with it. And ask myself why they put up with it, and I'm like, I wouldn't put up with that, and so I feel bad for her.
I feel the same as you.
Yeah, and it's sort of like...
See, whereas I have way more sympathy for Suan. She has such a type A personality of, well, if you have to do it right, you've got to do it yourself, because no one else is competent enough to do things the right way. And she's surrounded by a bunch of incompetent Aes Sedai, which we all agree are kind of incompetent.
I can see the other side too, totally.
Yeah, where I feel like she's got so frustrated with people like not doing anything, as we see with the crazy machinations of the White Tower. The only way to actually be effective was to browbeat people and to be a bully, and I think that might not necessarily be the result of her personality, but the result of her office
and training. For the last 20 years, she's been one of the most powerful women on the planet, and even before she was raised to Amyrlin, wasn't she still running the eyes and ears, which meant she was a woman in charge of thousands or hundreds of people for the last 2 decades. You don't just, something happens and the next day you're a completely different person. She's still who she was.
Well, I think she was also dealing with the same kind of issue that Nynaeve was dealing with, in the fact that she was young. And, she was picked as a young Amyrlin because, the Hall deadlocked on 4 different Amyrlins. And so, she got thrown out as another option. Like, well, what about this chick, since we can't decide? So let's, pick someone young. I think that they chose her sort of as a last resort, but probably thinking that she would be easy to manipulate, easy to push around, So I feel like they were very dismissive of her in much the same way that Nynaeve was dismissed. And so she has much the same issue with having to, fight to be taken seriously. It's just she's more controlled in her full nuclear option, I guess, and, better at it. Though she is almost 20 years older.
Didn't they also pick her because they didn't want... They had like 4 Amyrlins die in a row from old age, and they're like, we want somebody who's not going to just freaking keel over next year or in a decade or whatever.
Oh my gosh. And I just got to say, guys, this is just like Discord is saying old age in quotes. But this is just like a Egwene's situation as well.
Right.
Yes.
By old age, I mean Black Aja, yeah.
2 of them were murdered. 1 of them died of natural causes. But, yeah, basically, quote-unquote, old age, because, yes, old age equals Black Aja. But, yeah, they were sort of like, let's go with someone younger, and younger was, like, maybe only Aes Sedai for 100 years or something, and they couldn't make up their minds. They deadlocked. And so they threw her out. She'd been 10 years Aes Sedai.
And pick someone who's possibly who's probably young and therefore malleable by the older women around her, just like what they try to do with Egwene.
Yes.
Say, we'll pick a young woman who can be our figurehead, but actually will be the thinkers and planners behind this, and didn't work out that way.
No.
In the long run.
I mean, how stupid were they to put Suan with Egwene?
Pretty dumb. Yeah, pretty dumb. Swan, in a bit here, I think in the next chapter, spends a lot of time speaking with Sheriam and a handful of other Aes Sedai. They're kind of proto-Salidar 6, just trying to assert, like, she's like, yeah, I can't channel anymore, but how much does the Amerlin have to actually channel to do the job? Like, not at all, really. To be an administrator, you don't need the actual power of channeling. You need the knowledge and the leadership ability. And she tries to make that point, but everybody dismisses her until the end.
And yet Amerlins are often some of the most powerful Aes Sedai that the Tower can put forward.
Yeah. But it's just irrelevant, I guess, is the point that I'm making. Whether she can channel or not, it doesn't make her less... It makes her less dangerous in one way, but she's still as effective as she once was.
Yeah, it doesn't
what I mean?
affect any of her skills outside of the one power, and she makes a case for herself that way, successfully.
The other Aes Sedai aren't able to take her seriously, though, much to their chagrin later, when Swan is able to guide basically a kind of version of herself from 20 years ago. She already did this. She was already in this situation, and she came out of it super strong, and now she's guiding the next person through the same kind of situation.
But Egwene is much more subtle than Suan ever was. Suan
sure.
takes the bullying
Egwene
approach.
has much better people skills.
Yeah.
I'm just drawing some parallels between the two, the experience the two had.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Leane actually likes Logain at all, or do you think she's just flirting for practice and to make the plan work?
I don't think she likes him.
I feel like he couldn't really be very attractive in the state that he's in right now. He's so, he's unresponsive. At some point, they're, worrying that he may not get out of bed and climb onto his horse by himself. He's so in this spiral of depression or whatever it is.
He is tall, dark, and handsome, though.
Abigail is asking a good question. Isn't Canon Logain pretty hot? And I was like, yeah, I think he is. I think he's a big, tall, strong, attractive man, but,
Logain do be yummy.
Truly attractive. I don't think you can be truly attractive in that, despondent self-hate state, you know what I mean? Who's going to want to spend time with him if he won't even talk?
Sadness is not attractive. Well, I guess sadness is attractive to some people, but I don't think Leane is the type of person that it's attractive to.
I don't
Sex
think so.
on a stick. That's an interesting...
No comment, Christine. No comment.
And I think that Logain, when he's fully restored and back in his real powerful self, probably would be attractive to a lot of women.
He has kind of dark luster. I don't know that Leane finds that particularly appealing. I think she likes to be able to, manipulate him, but I don't know that she would ever take him particularly seriously as a partner. But it doesn't seem like she's looking for a partner. She's just enjoying practicing her talents.
The word patronizing is coming to mind, but that's not quite right. I just think she's trying to keep him alive.
I'm nodding to that.
Or keep his mind alive, maybe is a better way to say that.
Just a few of Min's assessments of Suan and Leane. I kind of like the quote, Suan would look a man in the eye, tell him what to do, and expect to see it done promptly, just the way she did with everyone else. And that's and that's her describing Suan in bed.
It took me a second, but I get it.
She would look him in the eye and tell him exactly what to do.
This is maybe a weird thing to bring up, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it. How much sexuality do you think there is in the Aes Sedai warder relationship?
Well, we're about to come on a Green who married all her warders, and there's quite a bit there.
And personally, I love that about Mirel. I think that that's a great thing that Robert Jordan puts in there. I think that there's more sexuality among Aes Sedai and warders than people let on. I think that, I mean, Green Aja exists. Well, yeah, you know, they say that that's the fuck Aja, the slutty Aja, but it's like,
Yeah,
I feel
that's
like...
what got me laughing.
I feel like many Ajas probably, you know, will dabble with their warders, you know, and why not? It seems like there's pretty effective birth control in the Wheel of Time. I don't know, it's a hard job being Aes Sedai. I feel like...
And they're humans. Like, they can't escape, no matter how powerful they are, just the desire to be with other humans and have intimacy. You know what I mean?
So what you're saying is the Yellow Aja is all about sexual healing.
Oh no, that's gonna be in my head forever now, that song.
That's the new type of healing. Does that use all 5 powers?
Oh, man. Well, let's just say the fire is used.
Only once Nynaeve comes along.
Oh, yeah.
All sex powers.
Well, yes, Burr objects.
Yeah, I think there's too much potential in the warder bond for some interesting sex stuff. I just feel like there's enough primness, you know, in the world of the Wheel of Time, at least among, you know, some cultures, some... Damn, dog.
Hold on.
He's
just like that, Morgan. He's a very talky dog.
He's trapped under the blanket.
He's entangled himself.
Satanis is mentioning the Andril and Pavara bond. I really liked that. I really liked what Sanderson did with that. I thought it was really good. Also, what Logain has with Gabriella was really good, and I was glad that that got expounded upon because I had always thought of that. You know, I was sort of like that. There's potential for that to be, you know, hella hot. Why wouldn't you, you know, find a smoking warder and, you know, get down with that?
I mean, the whole point of the warder bond is you feel what they feel, right? Like, how hot is that?
It depends. I mean, you know...
And an effective tool, I would say. You don't have to ask in that situation. You would just know already.
Exactly. Like, how much easier would that make it if you could be like, oh, you don't enjoy that. Okay, I can stop. Or you do enjoy that. I can keep going.
That's fair. That's fair. There's a lot of potential there.
It makes consent a much weirder thing.
You would know before it happened.
Right. But, of course, the warder bond is all
Before
about
asking.
consent as well. And that we can get into that a little bit, especially with the bonding of Rand with Alana, which is not consensual. Let's see, what else did I want to discuss? They're right near the border of Amadicia. We'll see that later.
Yeah, right on the other side of the river, it's described. A mile, basically, from the border.
She's talking a bit about her doubts and how they've been surfacing. You know, she was having a lot of doubts in Core Springs because, you know, Swan does not share at all what she's looking for, and so she just expects Min to obey, which Min resents, and then she uses Min's love for Rand against her by saying, you know, are you going to be a grown woman and help Rand, but doesn't tell her how she's helping him by helping Swan. You know, she just has to take that on trust, and so there's a lot of resentment built up in there, which I very much sympathize with. And it says that, you know, since Lugard, her doubts had bubbled to the top more often, and she found herself considering Swan in ways she never would have dared before. Not that she had the nerve to actually confront Swan with any of them, of course. It galled her to admit that even to herself, but maybe Swan did not know where she was going. She could lie, since Stilling broke her away from the 3 oaths. Maybe she was still just hoping that if she continued searching, she would find some trace of what she needed desperately to find. In a small way, a peculiar way surely, Lyanna had begun making a life for herself apart from concerns of the power and the power and Rand. So yeah, she's beginning to wonder if Swan is actually knows what she's doing, or if she's just wandering aimlessly because she doesn't know what else to do. And she's like, have I hitched myself and am taking this on trust like an idiot, and she's manipulating me because she knows how I feel about this man. And I'm supposed to believe that her mission is the right one, and maybe I should just cut and run.
I also think there's a bit of Suan just being Aes Sedai. She's keeping secrets for the sake of keeping secrets, not necessarily because has a reason.
Yeah, that's so annoying.
Right. Because it's like, we're
Min,
going there.
I think, does have the thought a couple of more time, at least one more time in either this chapter or the next, where she like kind of looks at her horse and she's like realizes she wouldn't get very far if she tried to run, so she doesn't, because she's nervous. She doesn't know what they're walking into, and at this point, Min doesn't even know if they're going to be walking into anything. But once she gets to Salidar, there is no escape.
Right.
The Aes Sedai would never let her leave for fear of her revealing their position.
Yeah, then you're just part of that, because they for now they're hidden from the White Tower.
They think they're hidden from the White Tower, but they're not. At this point in time, Nynaeve has already seen the paper in Elaida's office saying where they are, and she's racking her brains trying to remember. There are moles in Salidar that are there from Elaida. Like, you know, she basically knew about Salidar from the beginning, so they have these fears that are unfounded because they've already, you know, been blown. Nonetheless, yeah, they'll hold her tight and not let her go.
In a moment here, they're moving along the road, and then all of a sudden, or along a long overgrown road, that there's still kind of a track through the forest where the ferns grow.
Where the red fern grows?
And all of a sudden, the woodland just stops, and they get to the edge of it and look, and there's a village that is being rebuilt. But as they ride in and start riding through the town, that's where I'm starting this read here. As they enter Salidar, there was an eerie stillness as they rode into the village. No one spoke. Aes Sedai stood without moving, watching them, and so did younger women and girls who must be accepted or even novices. Men, who a moment before had been moving with wolfish grace, were frozen, one hand hidden in thatch, or reaching into a doorway, doubtless where weapons were hidden. The children vanished, hurriedly herded away by adults who had to be servants. Under all those unwinking stares, the hair on the back of men's necks tried to stand up. Leane appeared uneasy, casting sidelong glances at the people they rode past, but Swan just stayed smooth-faced and calm as she led the way straight to the largest inn, the one with the unreadable sign, and scrambled down to tie Bella to the iron ring of one of those stone hitching posts that appeared to have only been recently set upright. Helping Leane help Logain to the ground, Swan never offered a hand in helping him up or down. Min found her eyes darting around, everyone staring, no one moving. Never expected to be greeted like a long-lost daughter, she murmured to the other woman, but why isn't anyone at least saying hello? It is a kind of a weird, creepy scene where everyone, stops, stares, and is silent.
As far as they can tell, it's three strangers in Logain walking in, because Suan and Leane are unrecognizable, and only a few people even know who Min is.
Yeah, so this is, the warders and Aes Sedai are perceiving this as a very dangerous situation. Or even if they were just random travelers who just happened by, this is a serious thing to consider now. They can't be allowed to leave. Their position's supposed to be secret. And who knows what would happen if they let someone out. But of course, Swan ties up Bella and marches right into the command center, essentially.
And they do that little test to make sure that she's who she says she is.
Yeah, they ask her a lot of questions. Some of that stuff is fun. But luckily, when they walk in, Sheriam immediately recognizes Min and starts talking to her, saying, I don't know why you bothered bringing the stilled false dragon, but, you're welcome to stay here. We'll get your serving women some accommodations as well, for whatever it is she thinks. She has no idea who they are.
Which Swan and Leane think is really funny. They're standing there super amused watching Min get put through the ringer, as they're all why did you have this idiotic idea of bringing Logain here? It would have been better if he had just died like everybody said he did. And Min, who has been being dragged along and, didn't want any of this and would much rather, frankly, not be around Aes Sedai, is just what the fuck? And Swan and Leane are just smirking.
Yeah, Discord is brought to my attention. We should probably say Dark Friend Alert if folks listening don't know. Sheriam is a Dark Friend and is the one that recognizes Min, who was supposed to be sort of Swan's secret. So I guess it's a little strange that she recognizes her, but I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, Min was in the White Tower when Egwene and Nynaeve first arrived in the Great Hunt. She was in her, regular boy's coat and breeches.
Good point.
She was friends with Elaine, so Sheriam would have known her then.
It's the fact that she's back in her breeches, that's how she's recognizable. If she was still in dress, they'd be like, oh, Elmendreda. Although Sheriam does note...
Fair enough. Yeah.
...that Min is both.
Yeah, not nearly as many people were fooled by that as, Swan assumed. Swan's, assumption of her, own intelligence and infallibility and, arrogance to a certain extent led to a great deal of her downfall. And it's an Aes Sedai thing in general. They think they know more than they do, and they assume their own infallibility. And it's one of the reasons that she's in the mess that she's in. But I always feel bad for Min because it must make her feel like twice an idiot to know she was dressing up like how she hated, and all along everyone knew who she was and were laughing at her about it.
I feel like it's the Clark Kent and glasses thing, where it's like that. Yeah, we all know you're
really
Superman.
you didn't recognize him.
We're not fooled.
He's put on a suit jacket and a pair of eyeglasses, and now nobody knows who he is. Come on. I feel like it's important to note that the Aes Sedai in the room, Sheriam, Carlinia, and a handful more, right now start immediately pressing Min, basically saying, how did you know where we were? How did you find us on your own? And they're asking her all sorts of questions, and at some point Min says, I'm probably not the person you want to be talking to about this.
Do you want to talk about the vision that Min has of Carlinia? For an instant, Min saw an image of a raven floating beside her dark hair, more of a drawing of a bird than the bird itself. She thought it was a tattoo.
What is that?
The slave brand? Or the slave tattoo? Like the property of the Shan tattoo?
Does she get made to Manny? I thought she was killed in Teleron Riyadh.
God damn, you're good with the details. Yes, that's exactly... I have it open in front of me, which is the only reason I'm able to confirm that. But yes, she was killed by the shadow in Teleron Riyadh, and the raven here is a symbol of the shadow.
Oh, not the tattoo. I assumed because it was a picture of a raven, I thought that maybe meant...
And maybe it initially was supposed to be, and that got changed, but...
It's possible. There are so many details. I don't blame him for not keeping track of them all, or for Brandon not managing to remember them all.
And the raven has several different meanings.
Right.
Like, it doesn't just mean one thing. So it's pretty vague.
And Watt Wiki confirms Maria Simmons, who we've talked to at Jordan Con.
Mm-hmm.
She says that the raven is a symbol of the Dark One, and the viewing represents her being killed by servants of the Dark One.
Okay.
So I trust Maria on that because Maria is, the Bible.
She knows more than anyone.
Yeah. So, since Carlinia was never really involved with the Shan-Chan, we pretty much have to say the raven is a symbol of the shadow. But the raven's a tough symbol because it's both like a symbol of the Shan-Chan and a symbol of the shadow.
Right.
And the bottom line is it may be that RJ intended that for her, but she's such a minor character. She is one of the Salidar 6 that never got fleshed out as much as I would have liked. And, it's just one of those minor details. You have one viewing that Min sees. You have all of this stuff that Brandon has to tie up at the end, missing that one detail. If RJ didn't write down what he intended for her at the end, you can't fault him for that.
Yeah, and you could have written her as being captured in the raid, and that wouldn't have been that much of a difference in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Or even captured in the last battle, or, who knows. Or even, maybe she had something for further on. He intended to write stories about Matt. Maybe she was going to have something, beyond that. There's no way to know.
Yeah, that's why my initial assumption was like, maybe she's just brought into the Tuon's retinue and becomes technically her property, but we know that slaves held by someone that high are actually higher than some of the Tuon's relatives that might be a few steps below her because they're property of the... Yeah, but I was wrong.
Whatever. At least her plot line got tied up some way, She died so we know what happened to her, and that's good enough.
There is several of these Aes Sedai that you don't even know what happens to them.
There's too many characters to finish every plot line.
Like, apparently Phaleon doesn't have a wrap-up of her storyline. It's just presumed she survives the last battle.
Phaleon Boda or Phelan, the curly-haired, sort of more than accepted?
The latter.
Okay.
And then we have Muriel, who is the one who ends up bonding Land and saving him for Nynaeve. We have Anya, who is most likely the first selector, the head of the Blue Ajah for most of the series. Couple other Aes Sedai appear here. We got Edicina, who ends up traveling with Matt at some point. She's traveling with the band.
Oh, right.
And we also have, there's an apprentice and a few other little characters. But we get we're going into name salad here with the Aes Sedai as we walk into the tower. These are a lot of characters who pop up over and over and over again, but they're all pretty minor and don't get super fleshed out. I think this is where people start to get confused with, like, the word salad of, like, keeping track of all these various Aes Sedai and what their point is and who they are and what their personal politics are. So this is one where I'm just, whenever I go into these chapters, I want to have the wiki open so I can refer to what exactly it is, these characters, who they are and where they end up and what they end up doing. And I find that to be super useful.
Loved that on my maybe like third reread. I realized that there was the Watt wiki, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. Because I remember feeling frustrated on my first read through. I was like, I will never be able to keep track of all these characters who pop up like once a book or something,
Once more proof that you're supposed to reread it.
Yeah, you kind of have to.
It's designed to be.
To really understand it.
Well, and it's a real subtle thing. Like, Edicina is mentioned, and she has her vision. They end up deciding to make a Hall of the Tower and to send Aes Sedai out to rulers, so she gets sent to Terabon, gets captured by the Shanshan, then we see her next in Abu Dar, so it's like we get to see her right then, so we're familiar with her when she comes back into the story, and even though she's like, a quaternary character at most, if not, further out than that, she does play part of a role in later books, so it's nice to just see her there so we are familiar with her. And, totally. It's kind of cool. He'll do that.
No, all of these were, like, all these Aes Sedai's and the name salad that he drops on us right now is for a reason. All these characters end up doing something, even if it's not all that significant.
The Aes Sedai, after talking to Min, she says, you should probably actually be talking to this woman next to me because she is who knows everything. She reveals herself as Swan, and they start questioning her because nobody believes that it's her. And at first they're like, yeah, she kind of looks similar, and I think that may be an effect of stilling, but nobody really knows. And, okay, we're going to ask you some... And they go over, like, her voice sounds right, but that can be trained for, so they start asking her questions. And I was amused reading the white... I believe it's... Carlinia says, on your 22nd name day, you were sitting in one of my classes and we got into an argument. Do you remember what it was and what it was about and what happened? And apparently Swan was punished for arguing with one of her instructors. But there's just a long list of things because a lot of these women came up at the same time as Swan. To put it simply, or to explain it simply, they were like kind of in the same year in high school. So that, like, these women knew each other from when they were young, and they studied with each other for many years. So,
and some of them were their
funny
teachers.
Things come up.
So it's like,
that's right. Some were her teachers.
It's like, I remember teaching you this, or being, because a lot of these Aes Sedai are much older than Suan, despite her being the Emerald Seat. Scrapes gotten into, pranks successful and not, opinions generally held of various Aes Sedai teachers.
Yeah, a trout put into Soroya Sedai's bath. Pretty funny.
Together had even chilled a bucket of water near freezing and set it to a douse and Aes Sedai who had them switched. From the glint in Anya's eyes, it was a good thing for them they had not been found out at the time. Just a lot of pranks.
Yeah, there's a long list, and apparently we see all this through Min's eyes, but she feels quite surprised that the women who were highest in the tower very recently seemed like how to say, mischievous schoolgirls listening to these stories, and it's hard for her to kind of reconcile these two powerful women with, putting a trout in somebody's bathwater as a joke. Or that apparently Swan frequently snuck out of the tower grounds to go fishing, which you're not allowed to leave the tower grounds at all. Cute things like that. Fun world-building things.
Well, cute world-building things, and also things that someone's never gonna know if they're an imposter, so it's, like, useful. And also just, like, a bit of whimsy to flesh out the characters in a way that makes them not just, hard edges, but, it's like this person was capable of having fun once, even if she just seems like she's, chews rocks all the time now.
Right, even the most powerful general in our world or whatever was a 13-year-old boy once. Like, I'm sure he did some dumb stuff.
Well, and I actually really like the contrast between what Moraine and Suan were doing versus, like, Nynaeve and Egwene, because you have these two people who are, like, breaking all the rules, but nothing really serious is going on, so they're just breaking the rules by, like, giving people itchy pants and putting fish in their baths and dousing them with water. Whereas, like, Egwene and Nynaeve are breaking all the rules so they can, save the world. It's like, yeah, there is a parallel there.
Good way to put that.
Yeah, maybe there's the circumstances are a little more serious now than they were back then. Up until the point where I think Guitarra Moroso's viewing really changed everything for Min and Suan. Once she said the dragon had been reborn, and the fact that they heard that.
And at the end of all this, the Aes Sedai agree that they're satisfied at the end of the questioning. Like, yes, this is definitely Swan and Leane. And Swan makes a total power move at the end of this conversation and says, "You wanted to know how we found you. I made contact with one of my agents," she says, "with one of my agents who also works for the Blue, and she told me of Salidar." Which, from Min's perspective, she thinks Swan had done something other than tell them how. Min realized she had let them know that she still had access to the eyes and ears who had served her as Amyrlin. So Swan is subtly demonstrating that she still has all these skills and skills, abilities, and knowledge. She was the Blue's spy master, basically.
Before she was Amyrlin, yeah.
And then she was Amyrlin and had her own network of eyes and ears. Not so recently, like very recently this happened. So, just saying.
And Leane has spies in the city of Tar Valon. Not necessarily in the White Tower itself, but at least in the city, which is enough to get a lot of information about what's going on in the White Tower.
Exactly.
And that's a huge bonus on top of that. So you've got all of a sudden these two people walking in, and one has contacts with all of the Blue's eyes and ears, and the other one has all the contacts with the Tar Valon eyes and ears. And that's a huge amount of information that they just didn't have before. And then that on top of the Teleron Riyadh sort of info dump that they're able to get from, like, Egwene, who's hanging out with Rand. Like, it makes a huge difference in terms of information input and, like, traveling and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so for a short period of time, they end up being put into a much more powerful position. And where they're at politically now is sort of, a stalemate, stagnation, which, we can get into in the next chapter. But all of a sudden having, Swan and Leanna come in with the information they have and the things that they're capable of doing completely stirs everything up and kind of changes everything. And it's, kind of vitally important. And I think maybe that's another reason why Logain's Halo shows more and more is that, they too are so central to this web of the pattern that them bringing him there, it connects everything together in such a way that so much spins out from there.
I'm nodding.
Here's my big question about Suan's plan. And we're not quite there yet, but do you think that Logain was actually telling the truth about the Red Ajah?
It specifically says later on that Swan lied about it.
It says she could lie. It doesn't say that she did lie.
Later on, I think it's book 7 or book 8, I can't remember which, she has a conversation with Egwene where Egwene says if you hadn't flat out lied about Logain and the Red Ajah, so it says that it's a lie later on. So I don't think it's true.
Then why doesn't the Red Aja ever flat out deny it?
Because it's too filthy to deny? I don't know. That's one of those things. Maybe it's a sense of pride. There are times and situations and people who will not stoop to denying things, and to their detriment. But you see it all the time in politics. So it's not an uncommon thing.
Yeah. Can I say I suspected when I was reading this that she's telling a sort of half-truth, that she's taking something that is quite damning and really laying it out in an extremely damning way, that she may be sort of filling in the facts a little bit. That's what I suspected, to make it look worse than it even was. And also that if I were the Red Aja and put in that position, I feel like one of my first thoughts would be to acknowledge that I need to deny this gives it more power than maybe, like, I would hesitate. I would hesitate to acknowledge it at all because, of course the Blues are upset. Of course they, they're saying vicious rumors that they want to believe. And of course we are handle ourselves with more decorum than what they're saying. So, you see what I'm saying? Like, to deny it is to give it a bit of power.
Yes. And also, I think the Red Aja has darker secrets than they have to hide.
I think so.
They have the truth about the male channeler pogrom that forced, the retirement or the stepping down in exile of all three of their sitters. All of that stuff that is, referred to as the vileness and is basically hushed up and covered up, like Tovi and Gazal and Sutama Wrath, and I can't remember the third one's name, but they all got sent out to farms to work for years until Elaida called them back, like deep, dark secrets that most people don't know about. So it's kind of like, if we deny this, then more questions get asked, and then maybe darker secrets come to light.
But wasn't the vileness almost entirely created by Black Aja inside the Red Aja?
Yes, but people were involved that were not Black Aja.
And that's sort of what I think may be going on with the Reds prompting, is that the vast majority of the Reds who were creating the false dragons were probably black, but there was the occasional actual non-black Red involved.
Falane's being a bitch.
As
Curly McBitch face.
Despite the fact she ends up swearing to Egwene, she's still a bitch.
It's true. I was very surprised what happened with her.
I still, on many rereads, think she's a dark friend. It's like, oh, Falane, she's the dark friend, right? I'm like, no, she's just a bitch. But she's actually a good one. She hates Egwene, but she sees her as a powerful ally and as a leader. She, in the same way that these women are saying, we don't have to like the Amerlin seat to follow her. I think Falane embodies that.
That's right. She believes in the law and doing what's right, and she's like, this is bullshit. What Elaida did was bullshit. What this hall is doing is bullshit. It's all bullshit.
I kind of get her. She just thinks everybody's wrong. That's I don't see why Falane is hard to understand.
I think there's a lot of people out there who are like that, like very willing to, I think in this regard, in Falane's regard, to criticize and to hold people in contempt, but not actually do anything like themselves. You know what I mean? Like, she's not holding herself up to a higher standard, just literally everyone else. We should not have to hide. A dark, curly-haired young woman snapped, stopping. Min recognized her, and accepted, named Falane. She would have expected her to be in the tower still. Falane had never liked anyone, or anything, as far as Min knew, and had often spoken of choosing the Red Aja when she was raised. A perfect follower for Elaida. Why did you come here? With him? Why did she come? This is Falane talking. There was no doubt in Min's mind who she meant. It is her fault we have to hide. I did not believe she helped Mazrim Taim escape, but if she appears here with him, maybe she did. That will be enough, Falane, a slender woman with black hair spilling down her back to her waist, told the round-faced accepted. Min thought she knew the woman, in a dark golden silk riding dress, Edicina. A yellow, she believed. Go about your duties, Edicina said. And if you mean to bring food, Tabia, do it. Edicina did not watch Falane's sullen curtsy. The novice gave a better and scurried away, but put a hand on Logain's head instead, eyes on the table. He did not seem to notice. To Min's eyes, a silvery collar suddenly appeared, snug around the woman's neck, and as suddenly seemed to shatter. Min shivered. She did not like viewings connected to the Shanchan. At least Edicina would escape, somehow. Even if Min had been willing to expose herself, there was no point in warning the woman. It would not change anything. It is the gentling, the Aes Sedai said after a moment. He has given up on wanting to live, I suppose. There is nothing I can do for him. Not that I am sure I should if I could. The look she gave Min before leaving was far from friendly. An elegant, statuesque woman, in russet silk, paused a few feet away, coolly examining Min and Logain with expressionless eyes. Kiruna was a green, and regal in her manner. She was a sister of the king of Arafel, so Min had heard, but she had been friendly to Min in the tower. Min smiled, but those large dark eyes swept over her without recognition, and Kiruna glided out of the inn, 4 warders, disparate men, but all with that deadly-seeming way of moving, suddenly healing her, waiting for her food. Min hoped Swan and Leane were finding a warmer reception. They're not.
Edicina, we know, gets captured by the Shanchan and then rescued by Mat. Edicina and Jolene become the 2 people he rescued.
And Teslin.
Tobiah.
Oh, right.
And then we've got Karuna, who ends up being basically one of the Wise One's apprentices. She goes to rescue Rand from Dumai's Wells and becomes part of that group who swears to him. And she is killed by Hessalon in the last battle. That's all I really had. Notes on a few more these Aes Sedai word salad that we're dealing with. So
Opie Thunder's asking which one was Hessalon. That was Grendel after they killed her and put her in an ugly body.
Ugly Grendel, as we call Hessalon.
Got my cider with me. Bought something that Julia can also drink.
Nice.
Super hop cider. Incline.
I might go get there's a hard seltzer upstairs.
You guys drinking anything?
No, I have a sample beer I'm going to go get. I think it's an IPA, but it was nice. They drop sample beers off at the bar, and we get to take some home.
Yeah. I love it when beer and wine vendors come by and drop off samples because I know I'm probably going to get some of that. There's a lot of fun Logain stuff, too.
Okay, I am cracking open a Cannonball GABF bronze winner for double hoppy red ale, 7.1%.
Fancy.
It is Migration Brewing. Ooh, that smells good.
I also went out and bought some cider to drink while we do this podcast tonight because I pledged to not drink for my birthday month, which is November. We're recording this in late October. So, better get it in now. But
You're November 1st, right? Birthday?
I never do anything special.
No, and you never remind me of it, so I always forget.
I have this thing. I don't know what it is. I'm very comfortable as a bartender, but I still don't feel like I'm the center of attention. I don't know. I don't like having a party in my name, like that kind of thing. I mean, I feel weird. Rather just kind of, I don't know, have a normal day.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be at the bar, and if you want to buy me a beer, go right ahead.
My mom always likes to tell me that she went into labor while watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Appropriate.
Which I think came out that year or the year before. I was born in 87.
I was born on December 1st at like 12:01 because my mother did not want me to be a November baby because she thought November sucked. So she held on until midnight on December 1st. And I was literally, my birth certificate says 12:01 December 1st.
Well, I was born in 77, so I'm very old.
I'm 81.
Oh, well, we run the
You're
gamut.
technically a millennial then, Seth, right?
Technically. I mean, I literally graduated high school in 2000, so I'm like the first millennial.
What's the cutoff?
I think it's supposed to
Like,
be
what's
1980.
1980?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've also heard that like if you graduate high school after 2000, but those don't quite match up.
I'm married to a millennial, and she loves avocado toast. Just saying.
What's wrong with avocado toast? I don't
Nothing.
get it.
Nothing's
it's pretty
wrong
good.
with it, yeah.
I hear it's wonderful.
Especially if you put a little bacon on there.
I mean, bacon, egg. Oh,
If you put a little bacon on anything, I'll probably be happy about it.
Just eat the avocado.
I mean, avocado, it's just a beautiful fat. Like, and once you have a beautiful fat, you can use it on anything.
Yeah. And, I always think about this. I barely understood what an avocado was until, I'm going to say, like 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago. It just was not a thing.
Really?
Really?
I mean, my family didn't eat avocados. And, in like the diners I was hanging out at in New Jersey, there's no avocados. But there's not very much fresh food at all. I think just moving to a foodie city introduced me to it. And then I worked as an expediter in a restaurant, so one of my jobs was cutting avocados and putting the, like, nicely cut avocado on top of something, whatever plate someone added it to.
I think I ate a shit ton of avocado when I lived in Texas. And, like, have you never had guacamole? Like, I feel like that's an American standby.
I had,
Okay.
But I didn't really understand how it was made or what it was made of. It was just a dip that's occasionally at parties. That's the way I looked
wow.
at it. It's like, oh, and that weird green stuff, that tastes pretty good.
Yeah, the tasty green paste.
That does make sense in Texas. Avocados would be nearby.
Oh my god, they're like everywhere. You just go to the market and it's like piles of avocados just rolling off the shelves. And they're all delicious all the time. Because they don't have to be transported nearly as far.
Makes sense.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?